Call me a god.
What's going on, File Tech Crew? Back with another one. Yes, the real creepy death behind the real Annabelle doll. Now I also know, I do know this. It was in the last couple of days, or the cure. I don't know the whole story, but it was a veteran. He was watching over the museum or whatever where the Annabelle doll was and all the other stuff. If somebody could film me it, he actually passed away from weird circumstances. So, and you guys let me know if you can. Any of you guys let me know anything about that. Let me know. Anyway, here we go. God, this doll scares the fuck out of me.
Sometimes there's nothing better than curling up on your couch and enjoying the heck out of being scared. And one thing that scares an awful lot of people is toy dolls. From Chucky to the boy, there's just something about a blank expression and a pair of glass eyes that wigs people out. You know? But perhaps the most popular of these creepy toys right now is Annabelle. Especially because she has a true story behind her. And it might even be more terrifying than the films. So first, check under your bed, and then let's check this out. Now, we might all be very familiar with the movie version of Annabelle. In The Conjuring from 2013, the film opens with a spooky true story. A porcelain doll was given to a hapless student nurse, only it soon began to act weird. And then it got super scary. But compared to the true story that inspired the movie, there are some pretty huge differences. For a start, Annabelle was nothing like the creepy doll in The Conjuring. It was actually this. This sweet old little rag doll looks pretty harmless, right? Now, like I said,
that's what I was surprised to see, the fact that it's an actual rag doll.
Looks nothing like the one from the film, which I would never want to keep in my house. I could actually understand wanting to own the Raggedy Ann, which is exactly how all of this started. Way back in 1970, when a woman gave her daughter, Deidre, although some sources call her Donna, a Raggedy Ann doll for her 28th birthday. I guess she was inspired by this old commercial.
Your kids will have as much fun with Raggedy Ann as you did.
I know. It seems a little odd for a grown-up to get a doll, but it was a cute gift all the same. Maybe Deidre owned one when she was growing up, and her mom wanted to give her something a little nostalgic. The story goes that Deidre, or Donna, was a student nurse who lived with her roommate in an apartment building. She used to take the doll to bed with her, but it wasn't long before she started noticing her sweet, cuddly doll acting super weird. At first, she found it sitting in different places on her bed. Then it started turning up in completely different rooms from where she'd left it. Deidre started bringing it to breakfast with her, and she and her roommate saw it move its arms on their own. Finding all this more interesting than scary, the nurses thought that the doll had a spirit inside of it. So they got in touch with a medium to speak to it. They held a seance, and the spirit actually spoke to them. The medium told them that the Raggedy Ann doll was hosting the...
That's weird because they're both dressed just exactly alike. That freaks me out. No more me.
Spirit of Annabelle Higgins, a girl who had passed away and was possibly murdered near their apartment building when she was very young. Annabelle's spirit was lonely, and she had sensed kindness in the two nurses, so she hung out within the doll. She asked if they would make her part of their home. Because they were both caring people, the two nurses immediately agreed to let Annabelle hang out with them, which makes them braver than me. I'd have moved apartments. Instead, they welcomed Annabelle and treated her like a person, just like she wanted. They even gave her clothes and bracelets to wear. Unfortunately, sweet Annabelle was about to show her true colors, and she wasn't at all what they thought. More odd things began to happen around the doll.
God.
The nurses started to hear knocking sounds, their rooms would get cold for no reason, and they heard creepy whispering, which they just couldn't explain. Then one night, after their shifts had both ended at the same time, the two nurses came home to find Annabelle standing up in the hallway, like she was waiting for them. Remember, this is a very floppy doll with very soft legs. When they tried to make her do that standing pose again, it was totally impossible. One of the students had a fiance who wanted them to just get rid of Annabelle. He even said that they should burn her. That sounded like a pretty good idea, but I think saying this in front of her was his big mistake. That night, he had a terrifying nightmare that Annabelle had floated right above him and then tried to strangle him. He could not get her to move. Freaked out by this nightmare, when he woke up, he threw Annabelle across the room and yelled at her. Suddenly, 7 big scratches appeared on his body. If that wasn't terrifying enough, the nurses began getting creepy messages on parchment paper. The weirdest part was that none of them owned parchment paper. While they tried to see if anyone was breaking in, their tests on the doors seemed to prove that the apartment was free of intruders. So, this was all on their new housemate, Annabelle. The final straw came when they found little spots of what seemed like blood on Annabelle's hands and chest. It was time to call in some help. So they went to their local Catholic church for guidance. But their priest knew some paranormal professionals who would be able to clear this up once and for all.
They had to hide the little boys.
Now, you know that sweet married couple from the Conjuring movies?
Well, we've been called ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
But we prefer to be known simply as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Ed and Lorraine Warren founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, NESPR, way back in 1952. They made a living helping people with ghosts and other things in between. Over the next 40 years, they apparently investigated over 10,000 alleged hauntings and demonic possessions. So, in the 1970s and 80s, this was who you were gonna call if there was a spook in your basement, attic, or toy box.
Brings us to the 3 stages of demonic activity: infestation, oppression, and possession. The infestation, that's the whispering, the footsteps, the feeling of another presence.
This is the real Lorraine Warren.
In 1971, the Raggedy Ann version of Annabelle would be their first major case. They interviewed the student nurses to see if they could help with Annabelle's bad behavior. But the Warrens were horrified when they heard that the nurses were treating Annabelle like a real person, because they had a really good idea of what she really was. Something totally terrifying.
God does not allow the spirit of a child to go into a doll. This was a demon who was posing as that little child to create sympathy to these 2 young women.
So, what could they do to stop something that evil? Sounds like an exorcism was needed, which is a very risky ceremony. Luckily, Ed Warren was one of the only people in the Catholic Church allowed to perform that ritual. The Warren...
Hey, I want to ask you guys if you guys actually believe in exorcism or know anything about that. Let me know, because this stuff fascinates me, and the fact that the whole movies, all the Conjuring movies, the Annabelles, were all based on true stories, and they were true stories, freaks me out. I'm sorry I had to pause, man. I'm getting goosebumps everywhere.
Cleansed the house, the nurses, a very risky ceremony. Luckily, Ed Warren was one of the only people in the Catholic Church allowed to perform that ritual. The Warrens cleansed the house, the nurses, and their partners of Annabelle's evil influence. But the doll was much too powerful to leave lying around. Deidre must have been so relieved when the Warrens agreed to take Annabelle back to their place for safekeeping. The Warrens did not have a happy drive home with her either. And apparently, the car broke down a lot on the journey back. I think we know who to blame for that. Things didn't calm down until they splashed Annabelle with holy water. That's pretty scary. But even when they finally got Annabelle to her new home, the creepiness kept coming. Ed says he caught the doll floating beside his desk, so they kept her in a separate part of their house. But Annabelle still wasn't done. Even the priests weren't safe. The Warrens were friends with a priest who one day took them for a ride in his brand new car. Later, he asked to see Annabelle the doll. When he looked at her, he picked her up and threw her across the room. According to Ed, the priest said,
God is more powerful than a devil.
But that didn't stop Annabelle from messing with them. A few hours later, the priest drove home only to get into a major accident.
Half of his car was sheared off by a tractor-trailer truck. He should have been killed, but he lived. The last thing he remembers seeing was the image of that doll.
But he was luckier than most.
Wow.
In another story, a homicide detective who had probably seen some extremely nasty stuff in his career had picked up Annabelle while Ed Warren was out of the room. It's unclear what she did to the guy, but it
I
left
would
him
love
too.
I would love to go. I would love to see this room where they've got all this supernatural stuff that they've taken out of people's houses over decades and just all lock and key. And I do know, I think we all know that the doll Annabelle actually is behind locked glass, allegedly.
Traumatized to speak about it. In fact, they kept all the cursed objects from their case files, just like Annabelle, in their Oculate Museum. It's a vault for nightmares.
Everything in here has been taken from some place where people were either killed or maimed or so many ways.
I can't believe that this was right beside their house. Though they got all these objects blessed by a priest once a week, the Warrens never destroyed them in case they released the demonic energy inside. Plus, they got to charge for admission. How did they get all of this? Like I said earlier, Annabelle was only their first really terrifying case. But she's definitely the most dangerous object they kept there. But their measures still weren't good enough. The creepiest Annabelle story of all is when a group of college students visited the museum. One student mocked the Annabelle doll, daring her to slash him. This was a very bad idea. Ed Warren threw him and his girlfriend out of the museum and they drove off on their motorbike.
Less than 3 hours later, that boy was dead. His girlfriend, who had been with him on a motorcycle, said he was laughing about the doll, smashed into a tree, head on, was killed instantly.
The girlfriend survived but was hospitalized for a year. Pretty creepy stuff, right? The Warrens say that you shouldn't challenge the devil, and this just seems to prove it. The Warrens were involved in a lot of other famous hauntings too. Many of
That's the Amityville house.
them you might just recognize from the movies. One of the most famous was the Amityville Horror in 1975. Here,
that was a good
evil
movie.
Spirit in a cursed house tormented one family so much that they ran away in the middle of the night. It became a very famous story and a series of over 11 movies.
28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house, they were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget.
Amityville.
I think the father, as far as the story goes, the father murdered everybody in the house, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Is also part of The Conjuring 2. But that film was mainly about another big case they were involved in. This one took place in the UK in 1977 and was known as the Enfield Poltergeist.
They're calling it England's Amityville. There is a family that desperately needs our help.
After everything we've seen, there isn't much that rattles either of us anymore. But this one still haunts me.
While the Warrens weren't quite as involved as the film tried to show, it was a super scary case. And it happened to the Hodgson family in a totally normal street in Enfield near London. Teenage sisters Janet and Margaret and their brother Billy were being tormented by an angry ghost called a poltergeist. It did some really weird things, making furniture move on its own and throwing them out of bed. The family constantly heard loud knocking on the walls and terrifying noises. If that wasn't creepy enough, they sometimes got possessed.
Do you think there's anyone there just now?
Yeah, I do.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that, Janet?
Later, they'd realize that the creepy voice was being caused by an old man named Bill Wilkins. Bill apparently said, "I had a hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs." Totally terrifying! Other investigators reported seeing Janet floating and toys and shoes were thrown at them while the family was definitely all fast asleep. The strangest part of the Enfield case is that a lot of people saw these supernatural things happening. Trust me, real witnesses are very rare. Friends and neighbors and even a crossing guard had seen the weird events around the house, including Janet floating. Even the police didn't know what to make of a chair moving by itself.
And they also said that there was a very, very stringent odor of rotten meat.
Guard had seen the weird events around the house, including Janet floating. Even the police didn't know what to make of a chair moving by itself.
Came off the floor, or maybe a half inch I should say, and I saw it slide off to the right, about 3.5 to 4 feet before it came to rest.
If even the UK police say it's real, then I'm pretty convinced, aren't you? After 18 months, by about 1979, the haunting finally seemed to stop. But plenty of people don't believe that any of this is real at all.
Look at the administration.
While it can be fun to believe in creepy stuff like this, you do have to wonder if it does more harm than good. For a start, if it is all real, then this probably encourages more people to mess with things that they really shouldn't. And if it isn't real, it probably still affects your mental health in some really damaging ways. Your mind can play some crazy tricks on you. Take the phenomenon of recording the voices of the dead, or EVP, or electric voice phenomenon. It's when you record silence in a room and either a ghost or something else answers on the replay. EVP is used a lot in ghost hunting shows.
And we had a camera in the room where you saw the woman on the bed, and we captured a voice right in this area. He says just one word.
It's a woman's voice.
Or is it? Now, Darren Brown is a professional mind manipulator and often investigates the truth behind a lot of supernatural claims. He asked a forensic engineer for advice. This is someone who translates sounds in court cases, so he has to be truthful. After they played an EVP recording to him, he said,
"To me, more like electronic interference that happened to be picked up by a highly sensitive recorder as a result of radio waves. And I believe you could interpret them as guttural sounds of the voice if you wanted to."
What's sadder is that a lot of these experiences of the haunted people in the Warren case files do fall under symptoms for schizophrenia, addiction issues, and family troubles in general. It's a pity no one was ever allowed to verify anything the Warrens did. Ed didn't tend to let anyone verify the details, although they shared some information in the movies and books. And that's a pretty big red flag to me. Like, the nurses they rescued from Annabelle conveniently refused to appear on any record to at least certify their story.
I've talked with people just recently, as recent as 2 months ago, who know the two nurses, and even today, they don't like to talk about it. They'll never come to our lectures, and they don't want to talk about Raggedy Ann, Annabelle at all.
But what I really have to wonder is if the objects in the museum were really dangerous, then why on earth would the public be allowed near them, even just to look at? It's like getting a tour of a minefield. Totally exciting, but very risky. Just saying. Although the Warrens never directly took money from people they helped, the book sales, seminar tours, and the movies certainly didn't hurt their bank balance. Now, people have been skeptical, and a lot of people called the Warrens liars throughout their careers. It's also a shame that they didn't have access to the kind of cameras and other recording equipment that we have today. And it's also a pity that so many of the cases they worked on had witnesses who preferred to stay anonymous. While I can't blame people for wanting to forget the scary things as fast as possible, it does make it all hard to prove. Now that both Ed and Lorraine have passed away, the trail has kind of run cold. Though I guess we could do a seance. Just kidding. And whether or not Annabelle Higgins and the Enfield poltergeist are true or a big hoax, they did at least create some really scary movies. And anyway, with deep fakes and the confirmation of real UFOs out there, it's getting harder and harder to be sure of what's a hoax and what isn't.
Facts.
Yeah, makes you think, right? But you know, if it was between a demon and some of the real life monsters I've spoken about in my other videos, I'd probably pick the demon every time. So, what do you think about these scary stories? Is there any truth to the Warrens case files? And have you ever had a spooky experience yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.